Hey everyone, I'm Bhavin, the CEO of Magoosh, and I'm here with Ellen Kenny, who has graciously offered her time to share her experience taking the GRE at home. We know in the times of COVID that a lot's going on, and there's also a lot of stress around like taking these standardized tests. And so we wanted to give you a perspective of someone who's taken the GRE at home. So thank you for joining, Ellen.
Of course.
Just starting with a little bit of background, why did you decide to take the GRE?
Great question. I'm looking into PA schools, and as a graduate degree, so many of those schools need the GRE. So that's why I took it.
Okay, and how, I guess, how long ago did you decide you were gonna take it? And did you plan on taking it at a test center first, or did you just go straight to the at-home option?
I did sign up at a test center first. I thought about the idea of taking it probably back in February, and probably towards late February, early March was when I signed up for a date at a test center. So I signed up for early April, and which was right around the time that the COVID closures were starting. So I didn't know that my test was canceled until the week of. I kind of had suspected, but I didn't actually know until the week of. So my test was canceled, and they kind of told me, it'll be at least a month. It's closed for a month, and then we'll kind of reconsider. So my major concern was that I was planning to apply to schools by end of May and June. So my biggest concern was that I wouldn't be able to take the test prior to my applications being due. So when the home option came out a few weeks later, I was really happy about that, and I was able to kind of switch over.
Oh, that's great. And I can imagine how stressful it would be to sign up for a test, have the date, and then worry about your applications. And you said you're applying for May and June. And was that for fall 2020 entrance or 2021?
It's for fall 2021.
Okay. And hopefully programs will be open and physically available to attend by then.
Exactly. Fingers crossed.
So let's get into like the nitty gritty of the at-home option. So to start, did you have like a quiet room? Were you allowed to have anything in the room? Can you just talk about sort of that setup experience?
Yeah. So I live in a smaller apartment. So the desk that we have is in my living room. So that's where I was kind of able to take it, which totally worked out well. It was still quiet and I was alone, so it worked out. As far as what I was able to have, I tried to clear any kind of books or things that could be seen as, resources kind of out. I have a hutch on my right side, which had books in it, which I just put a blanket over because they didn't ask me to, but I just did that just in case. But when I started the exam, they asked me to kind of, with my camera, look at the room just to make sure there wasn't anything glaring, and they had nothing to say. So as far as putting everything away, it was totally fine with them. So I found it to be actually less stressful than taking it at a test center because I was taking the test the same spot where I studied and took practice tests. So I found it to be a little bit less stressful to me.
Oh, that's great. And that's definitely guidance that we've shared of trying to set yourself up in the exact room for your practice tests. And we'll get into that in a minute. But just want to talk about that camera piece. So was that webcam, the webcam of your computer, or did you have a separate attachment?
I have a webcam on my laptop, so that's the webcam that I used. So to review the room, I was just able to kind of turn my laptop around, and they asked you to kind of just point it at the corners of the room to see everything. And then the second piece of that would be they need to see the actual laptop. So you need to either have a mirror or a cell phone to kind of be able to show them the laptop as well.
Okay. And you said so there's a proctor. I know it's through a third party called Proctor U. Did you see that person's face at all, or did you hear their voice, or was it just via chat?
It was via chat and through voice. I never saw their face. So at the beginning of the exam, they will chat with you. And actually, one of the things that was a little nerve-wraching for me was that I was chatting with them via like text chat, and it took them sometimes a pretty long time to respond. So I was worried that they like weren't there or something like that. So that kind of gave me a little bit of nerves, but they eventually did respond. And that happened twice, first at the beginning of the test and then after one of my breaks. So I kind of like waved my hands at one point to see if they were watching me, but they eventually got to it. But that was the only nerve-wraching part of it. But yes, I never saw like a video. It was just voice and text chat.
Okay. And how long, when you had to wait for them to respond, were you waiting? Was it, 2 minutes or 10 minutes, just so people know like, oh, this is
Right.
what it could look like?
I think I waited about 15 minutes in the beginning. So that's why I was kind of getting nervous, but they eventually got there. So if you're waiting a longer amount of time, just be patient, I guess.
I think that's great advice for folks who, this is already a stressful experience, and then you're sitting there and you're waiting. And so it's great to know that, okay, it could take 15 minutes and it's okay. And, I'm sure at some point it might not be okay, but at least 15 minutes was your experience. And did you use a Windows machine or the Mac option with a Windows loaded on it, which I know some people have done?
I have a Windows machine, so
okay.
Yeah.
And then in terms of the experience, it was all of the sections of writing and then math, verbal in whatever order, plus an experimental. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So I got, I think, 3 verbal sections and 2 quantitative sections.
Great. And how was taking the quantitative section? Did you use a whiteboard or the laminated sheet of paper? And for folks who aren't aware, you can't use regular note paper. So I'm curious what your experience was like.
Right. So that's actually a really good point because I did not get a whiteboard. And I remember reading about it when I was first signing up for the proctoring exam. But the night before, for some reason, I just set out a stack of paper and was like, okay, I'm ready to go. So I was reminded of that when I started the exam, and they're like, you can't use paper. So the proctor is really nice, though. He was like, do you have a sheet protector? And he said I could put a white piece of paper in a sheet protector and use that. So that's what I ended up using, but which worked out fine. I had no issues with it, but that is a good reminder to get your whiteboard or laminated piece of paper.
Wow, I can imagine that being stressful. It's great that you had a sheet protector, though, and it's great that the proctor was kind about it. Just imagining someone who didn't have a whiteboard or sheet protector.
Right.
Yeah. That actually brings up an interesting question. So when you were practicing, were you practicing with regular note paper?
I was, yeah.
Okay. And I guess reflecting, do you feel like that impacted you at all? Would you, now knowing what you know, would you have practiced with a paper and a sheet protector?
Yes, now knowing what I know, I probably would have. But luckily it didn't make too much of a difference for me. I didn't feel like I was getting caught up in the differences between writing on paper and writing on that. So luckily it didn't make too much of a difference for me, but I would definitely recommend maybe practicing with what you're actually going to be using on the test.
Yeah. And then do you have tips for folks in terms of like not being interrupted? As you said, it sounded like you live with other folks. And so, this is an important time where someone can't barge into the room.
Right. Yes. So I live with my husband, so I just asked him to leave, which during COVID, there's not a lot of places you can go. But he was able to find somewhere to go, luckily. But yes, I would just say if you do live with other people, just make them aware of what you're doing and the time frame that you need to be totally alone beforehand.
Okay. And then in terms of the breaks, can you share a little bit about, when you were able to leave the room versus not, and when you could have food or drink versus not?
Yes. So at the large break, I think it's 20 minutes or 30 minutes. I can't remember, but at the large break, you can leave the room and you can have food. At the smaller breaks, you're not supposed to leave the room. So I didn't. And then at that 10-minute break, it turned into a 20-minute break because like the screen didn't restart for me right away. And that was another place where I was kind of nervous because it just said 10-minute break and I knew it was past 10 minutes. So that's when I kind of like waved my hands. I was like, is anyone listening to me? But eventually it restarted, but it did take an extra 10 minutes for that to happen. But yeah, but otherwise I didn't have kind of food near me or anything like that.
Okay, that's really helpful for folks. And yeah, we'll link to a resource below the video, which has sort of the structure and the section, so folks know how long the breaks are, should be, assuming you don't have any technical issues. And speaking of that, other than the delay of the proctor not responding, did you have any other technical issues pop up?
No, those were the only like so-and-so like called technical issues that I had. Otherwise, no technical issues.
Okay. And did they do a internet speed check or anything to make sure your connection would be strong? Or I can't remember if that's something that the proctors do.
I'm not 100% sure, but I believe they might have done that at the very beginning prior to the exam.
Okay. And so one recommendation that I'll share is that you can go to a site called speedtest.net. And test your internet connection. And, we'll, again, below the video, provide guidance on like what you want to target for minimum so that you can find the right room in your house. I know with Wi-Fi, some rooms are less stable internet than others. So that's just, again, something else that didn't go wrong for you, which is great, but, could impact people. So I'd love to just chat about how you approached studying. So can you share, how long you studied for and how you approached it generally, including what materials you used?
Yeah, so I probably studied for a total of like 6 to 8 weeks, more on the side of 6 weeks. So I was more on the like fast studying mode because for my goals in terms of the GRE, I didn't need to get I wasn't going for a super stellar score. I wanted to get an adequate score and kind of move on. So I started with a ETS study book, and it really wasn't working for me because, I really need something that like puts me on a schedule and has more of a deadline. So that's when I kind of looked at Magoosh, and I signed up for the 6-month subscription, but ended up choosing the like 1 month, I think, beginner study guide course, which kind of puts you at daily 28 days of what you need to do daily to kind of meet your goals of studying. So I found that really helpful. And I took that 28-day study guide and stretched it over 6 weeks. So I'd like split some of because the 28-day studying is a lot, especially I'm working full time. And then it was 3 to 4 hours of studying per day on top of that. So for me, I just stretched it out and would do 1 day of studying over 2 days or whatnot. So then in addition to the Magoosh study guideline, which includes the videos and the practice questions, I took a total of 4 practice exams, 2 that were provided through Magoosh, and then 2 that are free when you purchase the ETS test.
Yeah, that's actually, there's some great tips in there that I'm gonna sort of recap really quick for folks in terms of studying. So one is we do have a 1-month study plan. So even if you purchase the 6-month option, there's a 1-month study plan you can follow. It is a lot of material because studying in 1 month it's a lot. And so yes, you can adapt it like you did, Ellen. That's great. And then in addition to that, we do recommend taking practice tests periodically, and there are 2 free ones from ETS. The ETS are the makers of the GRE, and they're the only ones. No test prep company is allowed to use official material, not even Magoosh. And so taking those 2 is, really important. And we'll link to that below, but there are 2 free ones, and there's actually 3 other ones that you can pay for. So you can actually take a total of 5 official tests. But that, I think, that was really smart. And did you take those, both the Magoosh ones and the ETS ones, in the setup or in the room that you were planning on taking the at-home test at?
I did, which was also really helpful. And I would say the ETS ones were especially helpful just in terms of like, that's exactly what you're going to see the day of the test, like even to the point of like the breaks. They'll tell you about the breaks. So that was really helpful just to prepare myself.
Yeah, that's great. And you said you had sort of a target goal, and how did you exceed your goal, or how did you do? How did you feel about your progress overall over these 6 to 8 weeks?
Yeah. So in the beginning, I took, after 1 week of studying, I think I took a practice test just as like a baseline of what my score was in the beginning to see how much I would improve. I did improve considerably. So my goal, given the schools that I want to apply to, my goal was to get a 310 altogether. And I ended up getting, I think, a total of 316. So 157 on the quantitative and a 159 on the verbal, which I was able to bring up from like a 305, I think, which was when I first took a test without much studying at all. So yeah.
That's awesome. An 11-point improvement is really incredible. And did you feel like as you were taking the tests along the way, did you see yourself making progress towards, that 316?
Yes, I did. I would say after I think one of the tests I went down, which was really discouraging, but I kept going and improved from there. And actually the practice test that I took a week before the real test, I got the exact same score. So that was helpful.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thanks for sharing for everyone. I'm sure people love hearing about how people approach studying and then through the nitty gritty. And is there anything else that you think that people should know about taking the GRE at home, or anything maybe I didn't ask you that folks would benefit from?
Just that I preferred it. You don't have to drive to a testing center. You don't have to think about, traffic or parking or any of that stuff. So I think it's just a more comfortable experience. So yeah.
Oh, that's great. And I know it can be stressful, but like you, folks can set themselves up in the room, take the practice tests, get their routine going, and then be patient with the proctors and hopefully do well. Well, thank you for joining us and taking the time. And actually, I wanted to share a special offer for anyone watching this. We're going to offer a 20% discount on Magoosh's GRE product. The coupon code will be at home GRE, so no spaces, ATHOME GRE, for the first 100 folks who want to purchase a 6-month Magoosh plan. And we'll link to it below. And then after the 100 folks purchase, we will remove it. Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing your experience. We really appreciate it. I'm sure everyone watching and listening will appreciate it too.
Of course.